There are some seats here in the front. There are some seats over here also in the front.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to the first of many open fora around integrated pathways to academic excellence. And if you're wondering why we chose this as a title for this fantastic convening of staff, faculty, and students, this is a way for us to continue having a conversation around these integrated pathways towards perhaps one of the most important parts of our mission, part of our strategic priorities moving forward, which is academic excellence and, of course, student-centered culture, and much more, of course. But this brings together everyone here today. I want to thank all the staff, all the students, and all the faculty that are here, as well as academic leadership. Thank you, Provost Abdurrahman. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed Dalel, for bringing us all together today at a very, very busy time of the semester. So again, we understand how difficult it is to come in today and spend this hour, hopefully together, sharing our plans, ideas, findings, recommendations, and vision for the future. I think I see a lot of familiar faces, but for those of you who don't know me, I'm Huda Mustafa, and I'm a professor of practice here at AUC, of course. I direct the Center for Learning and Teaching, and I chaired the Task Force on Quality of Education, undergraduate education at AUC. This is not the first task force. So for some of you who've been here for a while, in 2017, we also had a provost task force around the quality of undergraduate education, and then another one on the quality of graduate education. And in 2023, a new task force was convened to examine the quality of education through a slightly different lens, using what we've learned from 2017, from our action plan in 2018, that focused on specific aspects of understanding what quality meant to us as a community, as an institution of higher education, as an institution that prioritizes our academic mission. And in 2023, this task force convened and worked extremely hard for almost 18 months to converge on some of the recommendations and some of the findings that I'm going to share with you today. Some of you have seen parts or versions of this presentation before. However, this time, everyone is here from the community. I see a lot of students, which is great, a lot of our academic staff and our staff in general, and a lot of our faculty. I'd like to thank Dr. Ahmed Tulba, Dr. Ata Gibril, Dr. Aziz Al-Lozi, Dr. Dina Abdel Fattah, Dr. Iman Megahed, Dr. Mahaberi, Matthew Hendershot, Dr. Nouri Sa'ar, and Dr. Zainab Amin for their tireless effort. Really, we were meeting multiple times every week to try and come together with what we're going to share with you in a very concise form today. And I also need to thank the facilitators of this entire process, my team at the Center for Learning and Teaching, our Educational Development and Assessment team, the team at the Strategy Management and Institutional Effectiveness Office, and the BI unit as well. And you'll see why in just a few moments. So the first charge of this task force was to step back and re-examine what quality of education means to us at AUC, and to redefine that through a lens of not only quality of education, but also the quality of the AUC experience as a whole. To analyze and collect stakeholder feedback, to engage deeply with all sectors of our community, to hold listening sessions, focus groups, interviews, to make sure that we capture a broad lens, through a broad lens, what the people of this community really care about when it comes to quality of education, and to develop strategies, to suggest, to make recommendations for strategies towards continuous and sustainable improvement of the quality of education, focusing on enhancing the student learning experience. Again, this is the second task force, so we were also building on a lot of what we learned from 2017. I'm not going to read out this definition, but I'll tell you a little bit about how we came up with it. We looked at two kinds of dimensions. The first dimension, what's that recipe for quality of education at a very high level? So it's purposeful, it's transformative, it's effective, and it's distinctive. And under that umbrella of those four main kinds of directions for quality, which often overlapped with things like quality assurance, overlapped with things like accreditation, but this was the definition we suggested as a task force moving forward. We also looked at it through a different perspective, which is what does it take to bring the kinds of students, faculty, and staff into our educational ecosystem? What happens from a process perspective when we conduct our activities as an educational institution that prioritizes our educational mission, and what do we actually deliver to society and to our communities, which is really the grounding force of what AUC is here to do. How do we make sure our graduates are the kinds of graduates that can contribute truly to our community? So the approach, very quickly, again, was a multi-step approach. We built on what we learned from 2017. We built on a 12-point action plan, and around, I would say, with some level of confidence, at least 80% of that action plan came to fruition. We were able to carry out the activities we set forth, and when we didn't, we understood why we weren't able to be successful the first time. We looked at quality of teaching. We enhanced our learning environments with the new learning spaces. We looked at incoming students and revamping our recruitment process with new excellence scholarships and taking another look at incoming students. In 2023, the new task force took a step back, redefined quality of education, and used a different approach. The first time we focused on surveys. The second time we focused on listening with focus groups. We also looked at extensive institutional data. We threw the net as wide as possible to look at all the data we had since 2018 to date, to extract from it what pertains to quality of education and the AUC experience. How can we leverage that to make our recommendations? In 2023, 2024, we started to converge on some recommendations that we were able to start sharing with the community. We iterated, we ran co-creation sessions, and finally, we're starting to move towards clearer directions around an action plan that we'll be developing further over the summer and after we hear from you and your questions today. The most important thing about this really is the participatory approach, making sure that we are involving as many of our stakeholders as possible. And one of the key facets of this exercise was stakeholder research. 188 people participated in these focus groups and interviews. Students, faculty, alumni, staff, and all our leadership. So we ran interviews with the president, the provost, our deans, our associate provosts, and started to extract some of the commonalities between how they saw quality of education at AUC, not only what we were good at, but also what we need to focus on improving. And we didn't shy away of trying to dig into what are the root causes behind why people are reporting these kinds of issues or reporting these as strengths of our university. At a glance, you can see, I'm not going to read all of this, of course, but we looked at over 30 sets of data as a task force in small subcommittees to extract, again, what we saw as either being very repetitive. We saw it in multiple places. We saw multiple stakeholders saying the same thing. For example, when we looked at exit surveys and we looked at alumni and graduating senior focus groups and surveys from program reviews, we realized students were converging around the same kinds of problems regardless of school. Students were converging around the same kinds of exceptional strengths of AUC regardless of school. And these were all very interesting findings. Let's see. Another important piece of data we looked at was our National Student Survey of Engagement, the NSE, and also the faculty version. Every year we run NESE, and we hope that you encourage your students also to respond to NESE, because it's one of the main ways in which we gauge student engagement, and we use that extensively as well. And we're able to compare it, going back over the years, to see if there were any emerging trends, areas in which we were doing really, really well consistently, or areas in which we perhaps should focus more effort. And then finally, in this participatory process, we convened with 55 members of the community, staff, faculty, students, and alumni, in a co-design session that we ran in January of this year. And then we started to, all right, we have these 8 main areas that we want you to start thinking about. What are some of the directions for actions? What are some of the things that we could take action in? What are some of the bold strategies? What should we keep doing? Maybe what should we stop doing? And this was an excellent experience for us to engage at a deeper level with a smaller group and to consolidate our findings from the previous exercise. So that's what we did, all right? And then here are some of the results. So in taking all of that data, we came up with what we're calling a AUC Experience Quality Framework. And it lays out dimensions for a not-so-secret recipe for what quality of education should focus on. You have academic dimensions, and I don't think anyone in this room is going to disagree with any of these, but this is what people really care about and what they identified as being quality, but also what a lot of the literature reports as being quality of education. Our faculty, our high caliber faculty, our engaged faculty, high quality research and creative endeavors, our creative works, and how we enhance our academic reputation through the high quality research that our faculty and students conduct. Our students, and how they take themselves out into the world and do amazing things, but also how, while they're in our classrooms, how we engage them and how we assess them. Our programs, the quality of our programs will remain a core part, and we just completed our first cycle. 100% of our programs have now been reviewed, and I think about 2 weeks ago, Dr. Zainab Amin ran a session where she shared a very high, very, very extensive view of the outcomes of those program reviews that converged very clearly with a lot of what we found in this task force as well. And it's always interesting when you have multiple efforts happening in parallel. They're synergistic, and it's always very rewarding when they converge and we see similar areas of strength and similar areas where we really need to focus. Triangulation of data, as they say. Liberal arts education, and of course, internationalization. How our degrees are recognized internationally, how our students go on to apply for master's degrees and PhDs, both regionally, locally, and internationally. Our degree is international, truly international. The second cluster of dimensions is the enabling dimensions. This is an ecosystem. None of this works if it doesn't all work together. Our staff, our campus facilities, extra co-curricular activities, the culture of care and the services we provide to our staff, to our faculty, and to our students through our centers and through the units that provide these services. Student success services, the kinds of services that students have access to at our institution that contribute to quality. And I think when you look at these, you can think, I mean, I can give examples and I will in just a moment, but these are the kinds of things that people really highlighted when we were in the listening sessions and focus groups. And of course, effective operations and management that support our faculty and our staff and our students to succeed in an academic space. And then the final cluster of dimensions is our reputational dimensions. And this is where we struggled as a task force to make sure that we include these, because the perception of quality is often mismatched with the actual quality that we all know at AUC. And it's just as important to communicate the actual state to our stakeholders outside the community at AUC. So our distinctiveness, AUC is distinct in the region and within Egypt. Legitimacy and recognition of our degrees and of the liberal arts that we provide our students. Employability, world readiness, the kinds of competencies that our students develop when they go on to their first job and when they go on to pursue postgraduate education. The societal impact of both AUC and our students, faculty, and staff. And of course, ranking is important when it comes to reputation, AUC's academic reputation, and strategic marketing and positioning, how we strategically place ourselves in the ecosystem of education in the region. So this is our framework, what matters, not only to the community, but as the task force synthesized these findings. The next step was, okay, we need to drill a little deeper, looking at root cause. What is it that is truly something we can amplify that gives us this competitive edge? What should we keep doing well, and make sure that we can keep doing well? The liberal arts experience, that sets us apart. We're the only liberal arts university in Egypt, and one of the few in the region that does what we do. Employability of our graduates, the very high employability index of our graduates regionally. If you look at our website, I think it's 96%. The quality of our academic programs, the continuous rethinking of our programs to remain relevant and up to date. And we'll talk about that when we look at areas of improvement. High impact teaching practices, active learning, project-based learning, group-based learning, undergraduate research, all of these things that happen at AUC. Our research, of course, and creative endeavors, and the culture of care. All of these came up not only in our findings, but also across all or most stakeholder groups. I'll give you an example. So if students, faculty, and staff are saying the same thing, that this is something they value, if consistently every exit survey students are claiming or telling us that having the kind of campus we have enhances their educational experience, access to the type of services that we have, and this is from exit surveys, then that matters. Our excellence scholarships. Dr. Ahmed Abdelmajid just reported the numbers to me. Last year, 460 stackable slots were available, and 310 students received excellence scholarships. And I think this is the first year that we've done this, which is an excellent launch of something that's given access to so many students and changed the way students can perceive coming. AUC has become more accessible and affordable to the types of students we really want to be at AUC. When we look at areas of improvement, we also were very careful in making sure that we had enough data across all the research we did to say this is something we need to focus on and either keep doing more of, if it's an ongoing effort, such as enhancing student recruitment, increasing quality of student intake, getting the best possible students, the students that really will excel at AUC. Those efforts are already happening. I just quoted the numbers, but the efforts are already happening through those offices. We need to continue to do more of that and to work together also. I know that this office every year asks for volunteers to interview the students. So that's a shout out for you, Ahmed, for more volunteers. The next cluster of areas of improvement include things that require ongoing efforts, but also bold new strategies. Teaching excellence, teaching effectiveness in the classroom. So things like students in their freshman year getting the best possible teaching experience, getting the teachers that are very familiar with high impact teaching practices, student engagement, assessment practices, rigor, and setting the stage for the learning culture that we want our students to come into AUC and recognize that this is a place where they work hard to learn and their learning is recognized. And that happens in the classroom, in the delivery. So teaching excellence. Research, aligning AUC's research goals, which are clearly articulated in our mission, with the university's commitment to produce research of the highest caliber. Of course, quantity, but also the quality of the research that we produce. And with this, another area of focus is how do we address perhaps a flexible distributed faculty workload model. And if you've attended this before, this has also been addressed by faculty who have attended this session before. Course and programs as an area of focus, of continuous improvement. And when we say improvement, this doesn't suggest that our programs have issues. It suggests that we can really continue to enhance, focus on the issues that have been identified in things like program review, focus on things that students have identified in their programs that could be opportunities for programs to pivot to different ways of looking at their programs. Rigor up-to-dateness and relevance of our programs, in addition to integration of the liberal arts into our programs. All of these are areas that emerged from our research as areas that faculty, staff, and students think need more focus, either through ongoing efforts or bold new strategies. World readiness skills, preparing students for their first job, preparing students with the graduate competencies that they need to be able to not only succeed but excel and get hired in the types of jobs they come to AUC to get. Integration of student support services, student advising and mentoring. These are all areas that already we've started to make efforts on. This semester we've already started focus groups around advising. Institutional agility and how it affects our ability to deliver our programs, how it affects our ability for staff to work together, and faculty and students, and effective accountability measures. And then finally, the need for us to rethink how we articulate the value of a liberal arts experience to our parents and AUC's value proposition. So when you look at these broad areas, they all fall under areas which we identified as a task force as needing more focus, improvement, and continuous efforts together as a community in enhancing our ability to deliver here. And then finally, of course, the elephant in the room is AI. We need an AI strategy, an AUC AI strategy, and we've already started efforts on that as well. And then finally, directions, and I'll end with these last few slides. The future, we've converged on 8 main areas. And as you can see, they kind of connect to all our pain points or areas of improvement. So for every cluster of areas of improvement, we have a focused goal. And for each of these goals, we have ideas for initiatives that we'd like to share with you, and we'll continue to share with the community to get further feedback, whether it's people who are going to be actually owning and implementing these initiatives, participating and contributing in these initiatives. So continuous enhancements of program quality. The second cycle of program review will be starting next year. More focus on faculty development in course design and redesign of programs, interdisciplinary programs, looking at how we can introduce things like teaching effectiveness frameworks to ensure teachers are aligned on what kinds of teaching practices we expect when they come to teach at AUC, looking at how we build the capacity of our adjunct and our full-time faculty, and teaching evaluation and how it needs to be multifaceted and not just rely on end-of-semester student evaluation. Increasing quality and quantity of high-impact research, reviewing research and teaching workload distribution models. All of these are ideas that we have defined as a task force that we think could address some of the root cause issues we identified as a task force. Ata's shaking his head because I think we spent maybe 2 months doing root cause analysis. But things like improving coordination among AUC offices, having offices talk to each other, share resources, retaining and attracting high caliber staff that are really encouraged and supported and provide professional development, which again has already started. Several of our staff at CLT have attended this semester's professional development. And creating strategic marketing initiatives that recruit high caliber students. I just saw the latest social media post by AUC Communication, marketing our programs in a very nice and articulate way. And then finally, we need to reframe everything we're doing within our strategic priorities as an institution. And most of the work of this task force centered around academic excellence and student-centered culture. Our goals and our actions are all aligned with this. Moving forward, we'll be taking, hopefully, steps over the summer to iterate and to finalize an action plan. And I get this question a lot from audiences when we present this to the faculty or to the Senate. What's next? What are we going to do next? And we'll talk about that a little bit in the panel, but we'll also get your feedback on what you think we should be focusing on next. And with that, I'm going to move on to the panel first, and then we'll have lots of time for questions. I'd like to invite Provost Ihab Abdelrahman to the stage, our first panelist, Dr. Zainab Amin, Matthew Hendershot, And Dr. Dina Abdul Fattah. Yes. All right, thank you. All right, just so you get a sense of how the rest of this session will flow, we have about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes for the panel, where we're gonna dig a little deeper into some of the highlights of the findings, some of the highlights of the recommendations, maybe answer some of your questions, but please, if you can, keep all your questions to the end, make note of them, and we'll have a question and answer session at the end of this panel. So as most of you have seen, we've been very busy these last 18 months, and we have 3 of our 10-member task force with us today. We also have many of the other task force members here in the room, so maybe you could just raise your hand so people can see you. Ata and Maha, and I don't know who else is here. Iman is here as well. So yes, thank you very much. And the CLT team is here, and Iman's team is here as well. This task force converged on key findings and recommendations that are built on extensive research and data. I'd like to ask the provost the first question. What was your vision back in 2017 to establish the first task force on quality of education, and how did this task force actually impact our directions toward advancing a student-centered culture and academic excellence? And when you reformed the task force in 2023, what was your vision for that at the time?
Thank you, Dr. Hoda. Let me start by thanking the task force members for their hard work and dedication. They spent really hundreds of hours meeting to come up with that very comprehensive report on the way forward for AUC. And also I would like to thank everyone who actually played a role in developing that document. We have more than 200 people actually played a role in that. So when in 2017, when I was appointed as a provost, many questions came to me about the quality of education at EUC. And I really did not know what do they mean when they say quality of education. What does that mean? What is the definition of quality of education? Because everyone I talked to at that time, they had different definition perspective of quality of education. So we as an institution wanted to come up with a definition of that terminology so we can be able to measure it and improve it. That time I formed a committee to come up with, led by Dr. Aziz Al-Lawzi, and to come up with that definition. And at that time they came up with the definition of quality of teaching. I agreed with Aziza for time being that this is okay, not the definition of quality of education that I will or Aziza be satisfied with. But since you're starting that for the first time, I'm more okay with that definition, and let us focus on enhancing the quality of teaching. And the quality of teaching is not only faculty, it's not only curriculum, it's not only pedagogy, it's also students and support system. So many things we looked at it. So out of 2017, and the report is online, please go and visit the report and the action plan at that time. Also, the report at that time recommended that we look at student recruitment, learning spaces, and getting feedback from our graduating seniors about their journey at EUC, especially in their specific programs. And also the idea came with, we cannot look at the quality of education at UC at large without looking at the micro level, which is the program. So we started also establishing a program to review all of our academic programs at EUC. Let me give you an example of how we worked on that. So for student recruitment, the recommendation was to recruit the best students in the country. Easy. How to do it? One, we have to change our admission criteria, raise the bar, that's one. But also we have to use our resources effectively to attract the best students to come to AUC. Are we doing this? At that time, we were offering mainly a financial aid to all of our students. A financial aid in a country that you can never verify the income of a family. We don't have the tools, we don't have the resources. So the direction was then to phase out financial aid over many years, not to affect the existing students, and to phase in a new system for excellence scholarship, which we started to do. That actually guaranteed to us that we put our resources into enhancing the quality of the incoming class. Learning spaces. We looked at every space in the university as a learning space. There is what we called it the formal learning spaces, labs, classrooms, and the informal learning spaces everywhere else. That's why you see those chairs in front of the library with the seats where we give opportunity for the students to meet. You see the new space that's behind the library now. That's also another learning space for students to meet and talk and discuss. Learning does not happen only inside the classroom, and we believe that learning happens everywhere on campus, and it's not only related to your discipline. Learning is bigger than that. Also, we looked at the recruitment and professional development for our adjunct faculty, who plays a very important role in our teaching as well. And CLT has actually developed programs to professionally develop our adjunct faculty. There are issues remaining related to registration that will stay forever, and I will explain that. So when we say enhancing the registration and advising, I agree that we have to work on advising. We started to do a few things on advising. It's not up to our satisfaction yet, but the registration, students always come at the time for the registration complain about they cannot register in the class that they want to, because sometimes they want that specific faculty, and that specific faculty teaches only 3 courses per semester. It's not easy to get all the students in the major to go to his class. He is teaching only 1 section out of 10 sections. That's not easy. So that problem will remain, by the way. We're not gonna be able to eliminate it. This is in every single university I have been to, either worked at or visited, really. But advising, we have an issue with advising, especially advising, and students in the room who are double majors will relate to that, advising for students with double major. Sometimes they go to 2 advisors, and sometimes they get conflicting advices. We need to enhance that. We need to make sure that specifically students with double major are really well advised, and we have Dr. Ghada Shimi is actually currently working on that issue. I hope I can go more, but I will discuss other things during the discussion itself with Dr. Huda.
That's fine. Thank you, Dr. Abdurrahman. I'm going to move on to Dr. Zainab Amin, and we just completed the first cycle of program review. How do the results of the first complete cycle of program review and the task force findings converge? And can you highlight some of the important findings from the program review that really feed into the next steps or the directions for the action plan for this task force?
Thank you, Huda. Maybe before I address your question, I would like to recognize something that you highlighted in your presentation, but I would like to repeat it because it shouldn't go unnoticed. It's the triangulation of the data. This task force relied on multiple data sets, multiple theories and methods to increase the validity and the credibility of the data. This is something that needs to be really appreciated and recognized and acknowledged, so thank you for that, Huda. Back to your question. Yes, of course, the results of the program reviews align very well with the results of the task force. I can give some examples. If I look at the areas of strengths or what you presented as AUC competitive edge, you will see that at the top of your list was the liberal arts experience. When we collected surveys from students and alumni across all our programs, The feedback from students and the questions that rated the highest were the questions related to the appreciation of students of how AUC developed their critical thinking, how AUC developed their communication skills, how AUC developed their presentation skills, how AUC developed their effective speaking and writing skills, how AUC contributed to their respect for diversity, how AUC helped them work individually and collaboratively in a group. And that's nothing other than the learning outcomes of the core curriculum program and the learning and the focus of the liberal arts education. So if this is at the top of your list, it was also at the top of the list of the students and alumni who responded to all the surveys that we conducted. If you look at one of the highly ranked competitive edges that you pointed out, you will see that it was employability. And again, the results from all different programs showed that very reasonable percentages of alumni who landed a job within 3 or 6 months after graduation. So again, it confirms your results. If we look at areas for improvement, and I want to repeat what I mentioned during the presentation of the program reviews, we're not talking about the bare minimum. When we talk about areas of improvement, we're not talking about bare minimum. We're not talking about adequate performance. We're talking about excellence, because AUC students deserve more than the bare minimum. So when we talk about teaching excellence, again, our criteria here is excellence and not just adequacy. So when you talked about, in the areas of improvement, you talked about teaching excellence. This was something, of course, that came up in the program reviews. We highlighted issues with recruitment of adjunct faculty. In many incidents, the decision for hiring adjunct faculty are done by just one person, department chair or program director or associate dean, and it does not go through a proper search process, and it does not go through a proper interviewing process. We also highlighted the feedback from students that they need more experiential learning in the courses. They need more integration of practice along with the theoretical component of the course. So these are things we highlighted, the fact that there is very much heavy reliance in the evaluation of teaching on the teaching evaluation of instruction survey. Again, we're talking about triangulation, so we shouldn't be relying on one source for evaluating instruction. We should be relying on multiple sources. In addition to the surveys from students, we have peer observations that is very important. We have faculty self-evaluation is very important. So these are all other sources to triangulate our data. You also talked about the need for enhancing the research. This is another thing that we talked about in the program reviews. The wide discrepancy and the big variation in the research productivity among faculty in the same department is very obvious, although they all have the same teaching load. This is many faculty who are very, very productive in research complain that they do not have the time to do their research, and they're teaching the same, they have the exact same teaching load as other faculty who are not producing any research. So we talked about how the importance of having the program be updated, be relevant, integrate career readiness skills. So there's a lot of overlap between the results of the program reviews and the results of the task force. Thank you for your work.
And what's interesting is that the methodology is a little different. So when that convergence happens, it's very interesting and reassuring as well. I'm going to move on to Dina. Because you've actually been very active when it comes to looking at program quality and continuous enhancement of your programs. And it remains central to the pursuit of our academic excellence as an institution. So how has your involvement with the task force and other campus initiatives that's been happening shape your department's approach to enhancing program quality? What are some of the things you've done? Can you share your experience with other chairs and other departments that are here today?
Sure. Thank you, Huda, so much. This is a very important question, and I was actually asked to summarize a 4-year process in 3 minutes. So, I'll try as much as possible to do that. And I would actually want to start with the program review. So we had the review of our program at the very first time I started my role as a department chair. So as tough as the process was in trying to collect data and prepare the report and so on, but it was an eye-opening experience in itself. Before we go through the process of the meetings with the reviewers, the gathering of the data and the analysis of the data itself was eye-opening in terms of we've been doing what we were doing for years. And we never actually stopped to look at how is the world changing and how are we adapting to these changes. And this was the eye-opening part. We definitely got into some details that will not be shared about this was incomplete, let's fix this, let's fix that, before we started the review process. So at the end, the action plan that was submitted was based on an internal analysis at the department level, as well as the recommendations that we received from all the dear colleagues in the review process itself. So we started by asking ourselves one very important question. What does the graduate of an economics program need to know, and what should they be able to do? And this was the starting question for us. And we have worked collaboratively with different offices at AUC to try to do our research, do the benchmarking, but also learn in terms of pedagogical approaches, in terms of pedagogical terminologies. How can we translate this into a portfolio, a graduate attribute? So a graduate of an economics program should know this and should be able to do that. And this was the easy part. The difficult part, how can we actually say that our students know this through exams, but are able to do this? So this is where assessments are actually coming into the equation. So we're not looking at exams only, because with exams, we can get an idea about what the students know, their understanding, their ability to explain themselves. But the challenge is always how can we assess them on what we have trained them to do or what we think they should be able to do. And this is the part that we are still, until today, addressing and working on. As I said, we went through a benchmarking exercise, not only to know what other programs are offering in terms of courses, but what does the future of work say in terms of the skills of an economics graduate? What should they be able to do? And with this benchmarking, we went to the conclusion of, okay, our courses look fine, so the program itself looks fine in terms of the course offerings that we have. So this opened our eyes to dig deeper inside the courses that are offered. So what are we teaching the students inside the courses? How are we assessing them? And how are we enhancing the courses with the different skills that we want them to accumulate as we go on? And I want to highlight the importance of advising throughout this process, because it allowed us the chance to make use of the AUC experience, as we refer to in this task force, which is making use of the core curriculum, the general electives, the minors, to actually complement this overall experience, because the program by itself is not providing the students with all the skills they need. It's this overall exposure, and this is the edge of AUC. So how can the students actually see the edge, benefit from the edge, and we as advisors and mentors put them on the track to make the right choices when it comes to that. On the doing part, we worked a lot on experiential learning. This is, again, a work in progress that we are looking at. So how can we make use of learning outside the classroom? What is it that we're exposing students to, and what are we enriching our courses with? Again, I'm seeing this, one final point before I get to the closing the loop part, adjunct faculty, and as Dr. Zainab said, this was one of the eye-opening experiences that we had. The hiring and the evaluation. So the hiring needs to happen with people who are experts in the specific area that there is a gap. So it's a collective agreement at the department level, but the evaluation is what is more important, because a single tool was used to evaluate adjunct faculty, and this is not a very fair evaluation, in my opinion. So we have expanded this. There is a committee that is looking at the teaching evaluations, in addition to course portfolio, in addition to the mentorship process that adjunct faculty go through, and the class visits that are conducted. So at this process, I always refer to it, so when I'm asked, when are you going to complete this exercise, I always say, I don't think this is an exercise that has an end line. So it's a continuous process, it's a continuous improvement. We have to stop, assess, and then implement. And this has to go on continuously, and this is what we refer to as the continuous improvement. So we don't have an end line that we are trying to achieve. We have the constant improvement of what we do and of the program as we go on.
Thank you very much, Dina, for also very eloquently representing this idea of the trickle-down effect from the very, very high level of where do you want your graduates to be to what's happening in the classroom. And I'm going to hand this over to Matthew to very quickly, right, 2 or 3 minutes, because we are running out of time, to highlight the importance of what we identified in the task force as an integrated student success journey and a learning culture at AUC, and maybe focus on some of the highlights, things we talked about, some of the recommendations in the report.
Excellent. Thank you for that. When we really think about this quality of education, it gets down to the core of what is AUC? What is an educational institution? As the president and others have said before, ultimately we build the minds of people. And the way we build the minds of people is through learning. And how do we build a robust, rigorous, excellent, student-centered learning culture so that when students are attracted to AUC, they know that the best place to go, not just in the country or the region, but even globally, to build your mind, to have this rigorous, challenging learning experience where we develop into people of impact and influence in the world. That's what attracts people to AUC. And so from the moment they think about AUC to the moment they enter onto the campus, all the way through their 4 years, into graduation, and even into their employment, that there is this experience of this learning culture, student-centered learning culture. And how do we align all of these pieces? It's very challenging to put all of these pieces together. And how do we make it so that there is an eagerness for all parties? I think many of us want this, but to get us to function together, to have this integrated experience. And so how do we take courses and make them more challenging? And really to look at some of those really difficult questions, like, if we're having courses where 80 or 90% of students are getting A's, what can we do to stretch students more, to challenge? And that everybody wants to see that happen, that students go, I want a more challenging course, and faculty go, I want to teach a more challenging course. And that the whole system from evaluation to programs to everything that was said, and from advising, that there's a central experience of students, from advising to registration, all the way through, that it feels like there's an integrated whole. Now, I know this can sound like just platitudes and big talk, but the reality is this is why we're here, and it's trying to put all of these pieces together, and our task force just kept coming back to these core issues and really asking, what's it going to take? And so how do we give student services in an integrated manner? How do we help with the rigor? How do we help with the excellence? How do we attract people who long for that? And we think it's possible. And I finish with that kind of big vision is because it plays out in the details. But when we talk about details, we talk about future as we develop action plans. We can never forget the why behind it. And because at the end, if we're not developing the minds, the brains of our students, as faculty, if we're not continually sharpening our own brains and minds through research and professional development, if we're not assessing our programs through this lens, then we'll never get to those excellence in the implementation. So I'll stop with that because I know we're short on time. I'd love to get into more details, but I think maybe questions will have that.
And our final question or statement is to the provost. When it comes to quality of education, this kind of big picture at AUC, and our North Star as we move forwards to developing a future academic action plan, what are the key takeaways from this task force that you'd like our community to keep front of mind as we work together towards these integrated pathways towards academic excellence?
Thank you, Dr. Hoda. And before I answer my question, I just want to highlight that you have seen now an intentional effort to really look at what we do at AUC in all their dimensions. So at the program level, we reviewed every single program on campus, program by program. We just finished them this year. Next semester, we're reflecting clearly on the process and we're enhancing the process. And Dr. Zainab Amin will lead us to the next phase of program review. This is continuous improvement at the program level. At the university level, there is the quality of education reports now for 2 reports that we looked holistically at what we do, learning from what we have seen at the micro level, at the program level. And we're not doing this in isolation of what's happening around us. We're doing this with an eye on the future. That's why Dr. Fadi Morqos was charged to look at a way to measure what are skills, attitudes, and knowledge that we offer in every single program at AUC, not only the program, but the co-curricula too, activities, and measure that to the needs of the future jobs and see if we are offering our students those knowledge, attitudes, and skills suitable for them to get the future jobs that we don't know of. And there is now a program, there's a way to do that, and economics was the first department actually to adapt that methodology to do it. Second, before I answer the question, I'm very grateful also to our students because we learn a lot from them. I learn a lot from them. There are 2 students, I want to mention them today. I'm sorry that I forgot their last name, but I want to mention them. Omar, I believe that Omar is in the room. If you can stand, Omar, please. Yeah, thank you, Omar. And Tia. So, Anna, I'm going to ask you please to go read, please sit down. Thank you. Go read Tia's article in in the Caravan. She talked about grade inflation. And Tia was telling us in a way that our classes, our courses are not rigorous enough. Omar also in the program review session that we had with Dr. Zainab Amin told us almost the same thing. And he told us that he also goes out to learn on his own because he wants to challenge himself. He wants us to challenge the students. And that's what we should do. So I'm thankful for both of them because I really learned from them a lot. I asked them during that session one question about their opinion about the freshman courses that we offer at AUC. And are they challenging compared to their high school courses? And the answer was, I'm sure that's not surprising to all of you, no. That means that we need to look at our courses now, course by course, to make sure that they address the future. We need to make sure that they are challenging for our students, to push the students to the really borders, and hopefully to break the borders. 3, and more important, is AI is a reality now. We cannot hide from AI, and we cannot say you cannot use AI. Everyone in the room uses AI, and we should actually think as faculty, think of a way to incorporate AI in our courses. How? I don't know. I can think about physics courses. I can think of ideas, but I cannot think about history courses. I'm sure my colleagues in history can do a much better job than me in that. So every one of us has to look into AI. Lesson learned, Dr. Huda. 1, our main business here in this university is education, teaching, and research. We educate new generations, that's teaching, and we push the borders of knowledge, that's research, and this is going to continue to be our main business. And that means that continuous improvement to enhance those 2 is a key in success. So continuous improvement means that a few years from today, we're going to have the same task force again to assess what we have done and to take us also to the future. Thank you, Dr. Hodam.
Thank you, everyone. And I apologize, we had 10 minutes for questions. We only have a few, but I think we can stay on a few minutes and start taking some questions. So do we have our first question? Okay, Dr. Sharif. Can we get a mic, Mike? Okay. Do we have a second question?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think this is a lovely initiative. It's very great to have at least one common perspective of what quality means. This is really wonderful, and it's lovely to hear about positive student experiences and student centricity and so on. One or two things that I want to think about are actually difficult to implement. Now, one of the more valuable resources that we have to pay very, very close attention to, especially when it comes to the perspective of one of those stakeholders in this ecosystem, is the time of faculty members. So by design, we are a university that normally lets people teach 3+3 credit hour courses. So operationally, things like the size of committees, the number of committees that people are involved in, and so on, by process, by what shows up in the faculty handbook, the amount of third year, first year, promotion, tenure cases, the multiple layers of getting a research grant approved, for example, in the system. This is the way we are, and by the time we evolve to be and bureaucracy isn't necessarily a bad thing. We're like 100+ years old. We evolved more bureaucracy, more policies and procedures, and this, by time, it becomes worse to the organization as opposed to maybe better for the organization. So protecting people's time is, I believe, very, very important, and I think we have to look at that from an operational perspective. Just because people are more active doesn't necessarily mean that they should carry more load, or more reliable, that they should be carrying more load. That's the first thing. But the second thing is, when it comes to research, no matter how many times we talk about quality and quantity, look at our passive conversations. We always refer to the quantity and the quantity and the quantity. Even when we look at the quality of research, we have one valid way of looking at this, which is not the only valid way, which is a citation metric. Right? So at the end of the day, looking at productivity, creative endeavors, intellectual output from a different perspective, I think is very important because people have different ways of doing this. Thank you.
Zainab, do you want?
Actually, there were multiples of questions, but I will maybe say a few words about the last point. You're absolutely correct that there is no one correct way of assessing the quality of research. And the best people to assess the quality of the research are the people in their own disciplines. One of the main findings of the program reviews that was highlighted in the workshop a couple of weeks ago was the absence of a clear governance document at the level of the department, at the level of the school, that is well communicated to the faculty at first, to the dean, and to the provost level. In many departments, there are no clear expectations of what a faculty member should be doing in this specific discipline. These expectations are not communicated to the faculty. In other departments, the expectations are communicated to the faculty, but they are not communicated to the dean. In other schools, they're communicated to the dean, but they're not communicated to the provost level. So there are a lot of different variations of discrepancies, but in general, they're lacking the clear expectations for this specific disciplines where faculty can really explain what they see as good quality research, benchmarked on what other universities in the same disciplines do. And this applies not only on the tenure evaluation or promotion evaluation or contract renewal evaluation, it even applies on the annual evaluation of faculty. The e-repertoire gives the chair 3 criteria based on which the chair should be evaluating faculty, yet we see many departments evaluating the faculty member on a holistic level. Overall, he's good. Overall, he's an effective citizen in the department, without clarifying why does he deserve excellent in this specific teaching criteria, the specific research criteria, service criteria, or even administrative criteria. So, and I totally agree with you about the bureaucracy, but in order to avoid the layers, we have to be very effective at the lower level. So if you want the higher levels not to look at your work, then people need to do the work as effective as possible at the lower level, and then they will not need any other layers to look at their work.
Dr. Hip, go ahead. And then we have Dr. Malak Zahu.
And the workload for faculty is very important. I fully agree with Sharif. We need to look at the faculty time. They have a very limited amount of time to teach, do research, and do service in the university. So the number of people on committee, and are they really serving or just sitting there? This is very important. In if I remember correctly, 2015, 2016, there was a task force to work at the faculty workload and develop a faculty workload point system. And I'm sure Adham Ramadan, he's listening in, he's out of the country, but he's listening in, actually was with me on that task force. And we developed that workload point system. We sent it to the Senate. In a day, it was rejected. I'm happy to resurface that again in order to make sure that we give the faculty who wants to, or she wants to produce more research, the time to do that, and faculty who do not want to, for one reason or another, do research, they can take an extra teaching load. But also, it's not only the faculty time. It's not only that angle. There is another angle, which is the commitment to AUC, faculty commitment to AUC. Sometimes you'll find faculty offices, you go to departments, you pass by, you find the faculty offices are closed, and faculty come only 1 day a week or 2 days a week. And that's an issue we need to address too. So this is also faculty time that's not given to the institution. And we need to also discuss that as well.
Dr. Malak, go ahead with your question, and then we'll move on to Dr. Rami Ali.
Well, thank you, Dr. Huda, for an excellent presentation. Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you for an excellent presentation. I was just wondering if there wouldn't be space for adding another dimension in the framework, which is lifelong learning, in addition to internationalization. And that would lead me to suggest that perhaps one of the ways we can go forward is to look at possibilities of doing micro-credentials at AUC and have more equivalency possibilities to promote lifelong learning, because that's what we should be doing in terms of a quality program as well. And the other thing I wanted to add into your framework was the whole issue of ethics, because we do educate minds, but we educate hearts as well. And I think even plugging in things like academic integrity, measuring that, where are we reaching with that? Because that's part of quality enhancement as well. Thank you.
Definitely, I agree. And these are included actually in our report under a learning culture. The report itself is now available on the Provost Initiative website if you want to take a look at it. But there's a lot behind this presentation. We have like an 80-page report. So please take a look at it. And yes, of course, this is something that we would consider, of course, articulating more clearly. We have Rami, I think, next, and then Dr. Rakhta.
Is this thing working? Yes. It is not. It is now. Hi. I have a slight unease about, I feel a bit of pressure that we have to sort of accept that AI is not only that it's here, but that we should welcome it and that it's a good thing and that we have to work with it. I've been teaching at this institution for 10 years, and when I began, the main priority was to address the fact that students were graduating without being able to write and that they were resistant to reading. And what's happened after we have spent a lot of time integrating writing assignments, providing students with lots of feedback about how to improve, is that we've sort of had to accept that we're not actually sure whether this is their work or not. And we haven't been given much direction on that. I mean, the bottom line is sort of like, don't use AI detectors, do interviews, but sort of accept now, also with a university license, that these students can summarize texts that we're asking them to read critically on their own. They can just summarize those. They can also generate text and essays in that way. And I find that this goes in two different directions. Do you want us to teach them how to write and how to read? If so, this is a slow process, a craft which they have to develop by making mistakes, and they need a lot of mentoring from faculty. Or do you want us to accept that we have to just bypass and also create lots of A's because students are allowed to, and they're sanctioned to, and the university provides them with the license to essentially forge work that's not really their own. It's not their critical thinking, it's not their critical writing, it's not their critical reading, and to sort of present it to us as their own. So I find that you're going in two directions, and therefore you're asking us to do two oppositional things.
All right, Dr. Ahmed, do you
If I
want to
may-
answer that
if I may
question? Please go ahead.
Answer. Thank you, Rami. Look, the thing about AI is, you know, of all of the initiatives that were discussed, the one completely new thing, although, you know, we've been working, there are people who have been working on this issue for a while. The one completely new thing, everything is either work in progress that we need to maintain and refine and push forward, or there are a few pain points that have been identified that require, within the larger set of issues that we do normally at the university, there are a few additional things that we need to focus on. AI is the only real new one. It's a new reality of the world in which we live. And there is amazing work that has already been done, given the short period. It's really impressive. I'm familiar with some of it, not all of it, but there is so much more work that needs to be done. Yes, we want to make sure that in the age of AI, which is upon us, whether we like it or not, students are using it, faculty are using it, staff members are writing reports with visuals that are generated by AI. And sometimes they tell us up front that, you know, I wrote this full report and so on. People are using it. It's a reality of the world. We need to come up with a strategy that ensures that we're still able to teach our students to use their brains, whether writing or reading or thinking or whatever it is. So we have to be able to make sure that it's done responsibly, that it's done, you know, comprehensively. It's something that we need to work on together. This is one initiative that ultimately is simply us adjusting to a new world in which we live, and we cannot ignore it. We cannot turn our backs to it. If we do, AI will replace the thinking process that we think is our primary job. We want to make sure that it supplements, doesn't replace, that we can engage with it, responsibly, and we do it in a comprehensive way, not just in the general requirements, not just in training our community, faculty, students, and staff, not just in generating data that will help us be more efficient. We have to figure out how much expertise do we need and how do we fund these expertise, because people who work in AI are very expensive, and on and on and on. We need to, we need not just a piecemeal approach to AI. It's a new thing. It's absolutely the newest thing on the block. It's a new thing. We need to develop a strategy, and ultimately the purpose of the strategy should be to ensure that we are still shaping minds, that AI is not replacing the ability to think, but supplementing the ability to think and taking it. How do we do that? That's our common challenge.
That's why I also mentioned Rami, and thank you for really putting that point forward. It's not binary, by the way. It's not 0 or 1. So every faculty has to think how can he or she deliver their courses, and if they are to include AI in it or not. But as a university, I think I cannot just dictate that there is no AI in the university, or every single course should use AI in the... We're leaving that to the creativity of our faculty, but as the president mentioned, AI came to stay. As a matter of fact, a few days ago, I asked Dr. Fadi in my office to develop a program for all of us in the provost office on how to use AI. So this is going to be our summer course, and that will be delivered by Dr. Fadi. And Omar, you're welcome to be an instructor too, if you want.
Gheda and Dr. Raghda and then Sulef.
Thank you, Huda. I wanted to comment on Rami's comment, because what you're talking about, of course, directly impacts the department that's assigned to teach writing to students, the Department of Rhetoric and Composition. And we have taken a very proactive approach, and the reality is that students can use tools to generate writing. So the method of assessing whether students are learning the writing or not, are achieving the course learning outcomes or not, has to change. We can no longer ask them to go and prepare a piece of writing at home and give it to us to assess how well they are writing. That's not going to work. And so they've restructured the entire course. That's the actually three courses that are required of all AUC students. And they've also restructured the schedule to teach in 3-hour blocks instead of 1.5-hour blocks. It's been an opportunity to rethink every single instructional assumption that we have about why do we teach writing in the first place? Because writing is evidence of your thinking, and expressing what you think is vital in getting things done in the world and making progress and achieving and engaging with society and character and things like that. And so they have piloted these 3 new courses this semester. Some of the faculty very reluctantly, but their reflections about this are so positive. The student reflections, CLT have helped us to assess these things. But I mean, it is all about assessment. That's my point. It's all about how we are approaching our understanding of the effectiveness of our teaching and our instruction. And we have to reposition ourselves to do this in ways where AI doesn't interfere, but actually enhances. And there's a lot of AI integration in what they've done that's also supporting the learning of writing rather than interfering with it. So.
I think what would be interesting, Rami, next semester is for us to run something at CLT where faculty share more detailed ways in which they've actually done this, not just a conversation, but with course syllabi and course activities and assessments and rubrics and things like that. Or maybe a debate, yeah. So we have some people who've been waiting for a long time. So we have Raghda, we have Sulef, and then Omar at the back. I'm not sure how long we can go. Raghda's right here.
Okay, I have...
Can we keep it to just one question so we have time for everyone?
Okay.
Choose one.
I was just going to talk about 2 things, but now I'm going to talk about one thing, and this is intercultural communicative competence. Now, one of the things that our students, our graduates often face is that when they are out of AUC, they are not they don't have the skills that make them capable of dealing with people from different communities and backgrounds other than their own. And intercultural communicative competence is now a process that is being intentionally incorporated into courses. That this is not going to happen by being immersed in a new community. It takes too much time and it's very frustrating. So I was thinking whether you would take this into consideration when you're thinking about it.
Yes, thank you. I think this definitely is a part of the competencies that Dr. Faizi is working on. Intercultural competencies is part of the attitudinal and the skills. I'm sure it's included. So that's something that hopefully we'll see a lot of departments think creatively about doing that beyond things like CBL, academic community engagement, project-based learning. So yes, a lot of people have been talking about that recently, so that's something we'll probably be working on. Sulef?
Thank you very much for the amazing work and for making us stop to think about how we do things. I really like how we're starting from the knowledge and the skills that we want our students to have, and I would love if we add to this also what we want them to do in the world. And this is something very important, how the education is linked to solving real-life problems. And I really think that the civic engagement component at AUC within the strategic priorities is really very important. And in my experience, I see that there's a divide between the curricular and the co-curricular activities. It's as if students live two separate lives, one in the extracurricular activities and one within the courses. And the programs that actually link both of them, so we do have the internship component and we have programs where students work, really are very beneficial to students. So if our definition of quality of education also extends to this with sufficient focus on extracurricular activities, I think this would be perfect.
Yes, it's there, and it came out very strongly from students and faculty. Dr. Amina Afifi, who's the director of ACE, is also looking at extracurricular activities and how they can connect to a curricular experience. I know a lot of people have been talking about that recently because students have such a positive experience with extracurricular activities at AUC. Omar, and then I think maybe we'll need to stop because we've gone over time quite a bit. So Omar, we'll end with you.
So I was looking at the matrix for the quality of, the academic quality. So we have academic dimensions, enabling dimensions, and then reputation dimensions. So on the reputation dimensions, the societal impact. So I think AUC grads are very, very strongly represented in certain parts of society and very poorly represented in other parts of society. And this became very clear to me when I was applying for internships in the past couple years. I noticed that when I spoke to people who are engineers working in top-tier engineering firms, and they spoke to me, oh, where are you studying? AUC. Oh, so you're probably interested in the business side of things, right? And then they kind of sidestepped me for the engineering roles, and they put me in the business, track. And I don't want that. I'm studying engineering things to get into the engineering discipline in whichever company I'm applying to. So how do we, solve this issue of AUC grads being overrepresented in finance, in business, in marketing, in these areas that require certain soft skills, and then, get them to be more equitably represented in engineering disciplines or other areas where AUC grads are very poorly represented? Because it's also a self-perpetuating cycle. So when AUC grads are known to be very good in business, they're never going to get into the engineering side of things.
So rebranding AUC's engineers?
Yes.
And we have Dr. Lutfi here in the room, and we have, I don't know who would like to comment to that. Dr. Lutfi, would you like to comment? Don't mean to put you on the spot, but you're here, so.
I actually had trouble hearing the question, but I'm going to try to answer based on what I heard. Is it like our graduates are overrepresented on the business?
In the business side,
even if they are
underrepresented.
engineers, they up to that. And it's just the career opportunities. It is true. Most of, and I can speak of many of the engineering fields, if you go into engineering, the career path will be limited and the salary scale will also be limited. So in fact, in most of our students, the best combination is when they graduate as engineers, practice for a while, go back to the business school, get an MBA, then you can go to the C class, and this is where the career paths are, the money is. If you stay in the engineering, yes, you will enjoy what you are doing, but you will become what usually is referred to as an expert. And yes, you will have an excellent, work opportunity, but not necessarily the money. So if I speak of the field that I specialized in, which is industrial engineering, the graduates of industrial engineering, which is just a specialization within our mechanical engineering program, most of them are opt for supply chain careers, where they actually have many other paths. But this is where the big money is, and that's what, and given how expensive AUC education is, then you want to go in that path.
So, but Omar, let me address that from a little bit different angle, if I may. Actually, that's a success point for AUC engineering students, not a weak point. Our engineering students are, by the way, the engineering school has almost 40% of the student body in the university. That tells you by virtue of numbers, we graduate more engineers than anyone else in the university. That's one. That means that in the market, engineers of AUC, graduate of AUC, should be more represented than anyone else. But they're so good, they move up to the career that they manage later on those companies. Ayman Ismail was in the room. Dr. Ayman Ismail was in the room. He's now a professor in the School of Business, and he's an engineer. Dr. Ahmed Tulba is also in the School of Business, but he's an engineer. The CEO of Swivel is an engineer. The CEO and the CFO of PayMob, fintech company, one of the biggest fintech companies in Egypt and in the region now, are engineers. So, honestly, that's a success point of our engineers, that we educate them so well that they excel at engineering, then they move up very quickly to a leadership position.
I promised to be very quick, but I just wanted to add another point. This is exactly the AUC experience that we are referring to. So students who graduate from engineering, just like any other graduates of other programs, are not limited to the technical courses within the program. So again, looking at the core curriculum and looking at the general electives, they acquire other additional skills that no other engineering student graduating from other institution actually has. So this is why when they get to compete, and again, this is bringing my labor economist side of the story. So when they get to compete with other graduates from other institutions, employers always want to make sure they're benefiting from the skills as much as they can. So if you are an engineer with strong technical skills, but you also have a strong soft skills, then it would be a bit unfair to keep you with the others who lack these. So this is why not only do they move up fast, but they move to other positions that better capitalize on their skills.
All right.
The way our president is an engineer.
As an engineer. All right, well, thank you very, very much, everyone, for joining. It's been wonderful to see so many people, so many faces, and it's just beginning. Lots more work to do. Thank you very much.